Kelly Schulz is a wife, mother, a successful small business owner who served 7 years with Governor Hogan's administration as the Secretary of Labor and Secretary of Commerce. She's currently serves as the CEO of the Maryland Tech Council, and in her most recent agency, responsible for attracting new business, job growth, and workforce development, much of a mission she continues today. And Tim Fouts at ABL and the Innovation and Translation team manage ABL's portfolio of government contracts that drive transformation of ideas to novel clinical products that prevent and treat infectious disease. And ABL was also awarded one of the best CDMOs in vaccines, am I correct?
Yep, best team manufacturing, yeah.
There you go. All right, well, we look forward to the conversation. Thank you both.
Thank you so much. Oh, that's very loud. All right, I'm not gonna talk that loud. Tim, it is such an honor to be up here. And so can I just acknowledge the last fireside chat that was here? Really smart humans doing really good human work, right? So thank you for being a part of this conversation. And I'm just going to acknowledge that I am not that smart. I am not them. I don't do technology, you do, the rest of the people in the audience do, and I think this is a really good moment in time to be able to say, what can we do in order to be able to advance the ecosystem for those of us that are not actual integral parts of the technology? So I would love to hear just a minute about what it is that you're doing at ABL, and how does that contribute to this ecosystem that continues to build throughout Maryland?
Yeah, so those of you who don't know, ABL is a CDMO. We have two faces. If you think of Janus, right? One face is your traditional CDMO. We make viruses for a living. Name your favorite virus. We also have what we call Government Solutions Group, where we do a lot of work with the U.S. government and through different kinds of contracts. And through that contracting business, we actually engage with companies all across the country. And so we can actually see where companies are doing things right. You know, they've got some technology that really is just jumping out off the page, if you will. And then where others are kind of floundering. So it gives us a really unique perspective on where the field is today. So if I was to riff on where the market is, I think the important thing to remember as you look at the whole thing is, what are you trying to achieve, right? You're always trying to achieve clinical success. And to do that with, these kinds of therapies, you got to hit the target, you got to deliver the payload, and you can't have any collateral damage, right? So those three elements are what drive the most successful therapy. So AAV is popular, why? Because it works. It hits the target, delivers the payload. Well, it's immunogenic, so that's a problem. Lent is also the same. Other viruses that are successful, herpes, adenoviruses, are all successful at delivering therapy. But the challenge with viruses is that they're fair to grow. And those of you who try to do it in the lab, imagine trying to do it in a 200-liter bioreactor. These things, viruses, are not adapted to grow at large scale. They put out, when they infect a cell, they put out a lot of junk. 99% of what they make in a bioreactor is junk. So getting it clean enough where you can then deliver it to a patient is one of the biggest challenges, aside from just trying to make it, getting it to behave. So it's like a rascally child that you try to put in, make him sit in the corner where he misbehave.
Time out.
Exactly. So their technology around trying to produce viruses and purify viruses is paramount to success.
So I'm just going to diverge here a little bit from the technology, because sometimes I understand you and sometimes I don't. But this is what I think I understand, right? There is a human element to everything that everybody in this room is doing, right? And to be able to find the best technology that's going to create the best solution for the human need. And there's a difference between the fast solution that's going to create a mass type of production and manufacturing, and then there is possibly a unique way in order to be able to bring a product.
Well,
But where do those business aspects of that collide, and how do you make that business model work for not just you as a company, but for the healthcare professional as well?
Yeah, so let's contrast it with
Yeah.
Emily and Colin, what Emily's doing, right? So she has, because of the kind of therapy she's developing, it's hard to do that as a CDMO. It's not the most cost-efficient model because you have to have a critical mass of developers who are feeding into that circuit. That's why the Children's Hospital works, because he's got this huge ecosystem that feeds into where he can have a good population of potential products to work with. And so CDMOs today, what has happened, you've probably read a few years ago, CDMOs were being bought up like for billions of dollars, and nowadays you see CDMOs falling by the wayside. And what you're seeing today is that CDMOs tend to focus on certain things. So for instance, you've got CDMOs making monoclonal antibodies, they're very popular there. You've got CDMOs that do AAV, also a popular therapy, or lentiviruses. Very few CDMOs try to do very broad things, like lots of different things, unless they're very large, like Catalent, Fuji. So the challenge at least in our ecosystem, is do we have a critical mass of CDMOs that are able to manufacture all these different products that people are interested in getting made? So the academic CDMOs have risen up because they want fast. They want to get it in the clinic quick without spending a lot of money. Because they don't, researchers, innovators at academic institutions don't have a lot of money. So they got to come up with a model that makes it cheap, easy to do. The challenge with academic CDMOs is once they get out of that setting and get it into a more traditional CDMO, the entire infrastructure or the whole program has to dramatically change. And because now you're going towards more of a commercial production where the environment's completely different and the cost structure is very different.
Right. So that is so interesting. And I guess I'm really fortunate to be able to look around the room and see speakers and sponsors and stuff here that are actually members of the Maryland Tech Council, so I know what they're doing. I know what you do in a general sense, right? But I also know that there are some challenges, some hurdles, and some barriers in order for the CDMOs in Maryland to continue on with a growth pattern. I also know, I'm very thankful for knowing the accelerators, the incubators, those startup scientists that are here that are doing really great work in research and looking forward to the development opportunity. But there's barriers to get to that development opportunity. It almost seems to be the biggest barrier in the life change of what we're doing in order to create solutions.
Yeah, so if you take so we heard a little bit about some of the challenges with cell therapy, right? So for manufacturing viruses, the challenges are that the technology we're relying on is bioreactors, or what we call fixed bed, different kinds of bioreactors to make them. Those are very expensive to build and to make. The processes you have to use can be quite expensive. A simple making enough virus for AAV virus to treat 20 children can cost you almost $10 million sometimes, which is, can be why, it explains why these therapies are so expensive once they're commercialized. You can try to make these as efficient as possible, but these are still very expensive therapies. So if we talk about where growth areas in biomanufacturing, in my opinion, it is the concept, if you will, is called process intensification, to try and shrink the scale so that you can make the products cheaper to make, more obtainable to the market. It also would allow you to begin to target some of these rare therapies which have smaller patient pools, because now it's actually obtainable for some of these nonprofit foundations to actually afford to actually make some of these therapies for these individuals.
So where do they physically do this, right? I mean, is it possible to do that in Maryland, right? Because we have an awful lot of intellectual property and research that's coming out of our university systems between the University of Maryland, between Johns Hopkins, and really everything in between all over the state, in the incubators and the accelerators. So for their purpose, like, how do we grow that industry in order to be able to accommodate and commercialize a lot of this really wonderful solution products that are coming out, well, I guess actually making it a product? How do we do that?
So in my opinion, the focus has to be an investment in manufacturing technology, right? So we can today make products. We can do it. It's just expensive. And it's not the most efficient thing. And that's more of an artifact of the viruses we're working with, right? It's not that they don't perform, it's just that they're really difficult. So, but we need to, if we're going to try to drive down the costs of these things, we've got to find ways of intensifying these processes to make them cheaper and smaller. Instead of doing a 200-liter bioreactor, we want to be able to do it in a tube or a little shake flask or something.
Do we have smart people in Maryland that can do that?
Yes, the challenge. A lot of very
Raise your
smart
hand
people.
if you're one of them. Okay, that's awesome.
Lots of very smart people. The challenge, obviously, is as you're hitting on, is money, right?
Yeah.
We need the investment. So I think conceptually, most people get it to invest in products, right? These small biotechs, innovative biotechs that come up with the products. The gap in what I see is that there's not a whole lot of investment from the governments into biomanufacturing infrastructure. That seems to be that's a big gap. Well, so you think the way it works is people will fund products. So you need a process to build the product, they'll fund that. But they don't look beyond that product. The process can be used for other stuff. Now, what if you spent the money? It's the same story. I teach a guy to farm. He can feed himself forever. Well, it's the same concept. Why? So if you invest in the manufacturing components to make it cheaper, you can now share that with a whole slew of different innovators. It opens up a whole lot more.
Right, so it's an ecosystem enhancer, right? So when we talk about the whole ecosystem of where we are in Maryland, by the way, Maryland is the third largest biotech ecosystem in the country. Did everybody know that? Most people don't. Thank you if you do. But we are behind, obviously, Boston and San Francisco, but we are the third largest, and people don't know that. Like, intuitively, when you go to San Francisco, they don't say, hey, I'm looking forward to going to Maryland. I mean, they just don't, right? And same with Boston. We'll be at the bio conference in Boston in a couple of weeks, and hopefully I'll see a lot of people there. But there is a way to create the ecosystem in Maryland so that it has a sustainable base, which is not just an innovator, not just the researcher, right, but the commercialization part of that in order to bring it to the next level. Where do you guys fit with that?
Well, we would be very, very supportive of that. I think from our perspective, it's all about technology. So today, making viruses is done in, let's say, bioreactors. But the next gen is taking the virus away. So using something that looks like a virus, but it's not going to be as immunogenic as a virus, but will still hit the target and deliver the payload. And you can these are lipids or other things that may have better targeting mechanisms, right? That's one. The other thing is now how to make those. Still a bit of a challenge. Lipids technology is still nascent. It's got a lot better. It's a lot faster. You've got RNA is very popular. At least was like 3 months ago. But the pieces that are coming up are things like cell-free manufacturing, where you don't need a bioreactor. And so, Erica, my colleague Erica here, hears me talk about this all the time. Like, if I can make it in a bag on a bench at room temperature, I win. Because then it makes it attainable to carry this manufacturing process anywhere. Like in my garage, perhaps. That's kind of where I think the tech has to go, because then the therapies become approachable from become more commonplace.
Mainstream.
Mainstream, yeah.
Right, we want to be able to make sure that people have a choice in their healthcare, in different types of options in order for them to be healthy, right? To create the humanness.
Well, I mean, these are, as a prior speaker said, these therapies work. And when they work, holy moly, children are blind one day and the next day they can see. Children are walking where they were sitting in a wheelchair. I mean, this is real stuff that's happening today. It's just truly mind-boggling. But these therapies are so expensive that you can treat a few people, that's about it.
That's right. And so we could spend an hour talking about the storytelling, and thank you to Children's Hospital and to Cartesian for helping a little bit with that storytelling, right, moving forward. The industry has to get better at storytelling because people kind of get in the weeds sometimes as to the technology that's there. And so I invite everybody to be a storyteller. If you have a story, say it loud, talk about the human impact of where we are. But I know that we're running very quickly out of time. And when I was reading over my notes that Chris and his team sent over to us, he said, don't be afraid in the last minute or so to really just kind of be on the edge. I'm not afraid, Tim. Are you?
So to be a provocateur, I think the current climate and some of the things that we've heard, the ridiculousness that we've heard from people who do not understand the science, demands that we as scientists speak and advocate and get in front of people and say you're wrong. And this is the right thing to say. Yeah, so I'm hopeful that, I think the challenge for scientists is that we're, usually introverted.
You did a good job, Tim. I'm proud of you.
We
I'm
see
proud
some
of you.
coaching,
All right, so I'm gonna just take that because I know I have like 30 seconds. I think it's up really to all of us, right? When we're talking about employing our PhDs, employing our scientists, bringing entry-level people into the life science world and biotechnology in order to create this really fabulous ecosystem in which we live. And that has done so much work to get to where we are now. To see some of the declines in the progress that we've made, it really is going to take an entire community to step up and say, who are we and what do we want? And how are we going to continue to make progress like some other regions in the country are doing? And so my invitation, Tim, to you is to be one of those voices, as well as to invite everybody in this room, because the progress that we have made is not just because of the ecosystem that has been created for really fabulous peoples and fabulous families and community, but it is because of the stories that can be told of the human factor that we can be an integral part of, and I think we should.
Agreed. Sign me up.
All right, let's do it.